Well, we've finished through movies 2 through 6 of our Star Trek collection here, finishing out the TOS crew's final outings as the TOS crew. The only other piece of TOS media material that I have not seen as of yet would have to be the animated series, which I honestly do plan to pick up someday. I will get around to the animated series someday because I love the TOS crew. When I think of Star Trek, I think of Kirk, Bones, and Spock, and all the rest. Sulu, Chekhov, Uhura, and Scotty, and all the other guys besides. Yeoman Rand, even though she was only in Season 1, she shows up for most of these movies in some cameo appearance or something, which is very interesting to me. I wonder why Yeoman Rand did not stick around. I don't know if it was like a scheduling conflict or some sort of thing where she had disagreements about how her character was to go forward. I don't know, but the episodes of Yeoman Rand were great, and I'm glad to see that she had some cameos, some appearances in most of these movies. She was in the final sixth one as well, and I really appreciate that. I think she was on Sulu's crew on the starship. Man, I can't remember its name. It's not the Enterprise. Sulu has his own ship now. It's that new ship that they incapacitated in the search for Spock. I cannot remember its name. The Endeavor? I don't know. Either way, people talk about the whole odd number curse in the original 6 films, how the first, the third, and the fifth movies are poor. I would agree that the fifth movie is kind of poor, but the first movie is probably my favorite out of all 6 of them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I enjoyed it the most. No, I enjoyed Star Trek 4 and Star Trek 6 far more than Star Trek 1. But Star Trek 1 made me think far more than 4 and 6 did. 4 is definitely the most movie of all of the Star Trek films. Whereas Star Trek 6 feels like it's the perfect blending of TOS episode shtick with movie energy. But when it comes to the TOS energy, like the whole show of the TOS, the movie does emulate that very powerfully. And I think the reason why the first one does this is because it's made of discarded storylines from a TV series that they were going to make. They were going to make a Phase 2 TV series in the late 70s and until Star Wars happened, and then they scrapped that and decided to go for a movie instead. But a lot of the storylines still existed, still were penned for this TV series that never got off the ground, and so they repurposed some of those ideas for the movie, which I really appreciated. I liked the stories that they decided to use. I like the idea that they decided to go with. I love the idea that this giant mega structure in space heading towards Earth actually ends up being the Voyager probe that Earth sent out so long ago. It had actually encountered a black hole and was sent to the other side of the galaxy, where it encountered a machine planet. The machine planets thought it was one of their own kind, so that they reconstructed it and gave it the materials it needed to go out and fulfill its programming. And then somewhere along the way it forgot it was a Voyager probe. It forgot it was made by humans, and then when it came back to Earth looking for its creator, it couldn't determine or realize that humans were its creator. I love the whole thing. The special effects were absolutely amazing. I cannot begin to describe how beautiful Star Trek 1 is. It is probably the best looking film, special effects wise, out of all of them. A lot of people say, oh, it's so slow. You see that 5 minutes clip where you get to see the Enterprise? That was one of the better parts for me. You get to see this high quality, well made miniature, and they're proud of what they made. They're proud of the music that they made. So they let you listen in and hear that music while you get to see this incredibly detailed miniature from top to bottom. It's like a tour. I loved it. And then again, you get another tour of the corridor of the Voyager probe, the big mega structure that you're going into. It's a multiple astronomical unit sized thing. It is massive. This thing is massive, and it is coming towards Earth, and you get to fly your Enterprise through this giant mega structure, and you're seeing this big corridor with all sorts of colors. It's all practical. There's very little CG effects. This is 1979. If they're gonna do effects like that, it would be like cartoonistically animated, trying to maybe stop motion a little bit, which is also pretty good. But it's all practical here, and it is beautiful. It's like painted glass structures. It's so good to look at. I appreciated everything on display in that film. I don't care how slow it is. Star Trek TOS is a slow show. It's just because it was condensed to a 40-minute film. That's something that would be incredibly slow as a film would be decently paced as a 40-minute episode. This would probably be a little bit better were it a 40-minute episode rather than a whole feature-length film, but I don't care. I don't mind. Make it a 2-part feature-length pilot, and it would have worked perfectly fine. I love the effects, I love the budget, I love the crew, everybody looks great. The uniforms kind of bother me a little bit, but if they stuck with these uniforms, I guess. Kirk's uniform does look like a dentist guy, though. He really needed something else. I really hated the outfits from movies 2 through 6 onwards. The uniforms that they chose for these guys. Kirk's outfit in movie 3 is probably the better one. He discards his uniform because he's supposed to be on shore leave, but then he steals the Enterprise with the bridge crew, the classic bridge crew, and they go out and try to get Spock back. And that's one of the movies that it's an odd number movie. It's a movie that people think it's one of the worst ones. No. The Search for Spock is a very good film. In fact, I might like it more than The Wrath of Khan. And people say, oh, that's a travesty. The Wrath of Khan is probably the best one. Alright, look. The Wrath of Khan's fine. It's not a great film, but it's a good one. It's probably the third one, ranked 4th for me, out of all 6 of them. No, maybe ranked 5th even. You see, my highest ranked one is the first movie. I love the first movie. I love it a lot. And then I would put Star Trek 6. And then I would probably put Star Trek 4 just for how campy and movie-like it is. Then I would say it's Search for Spock. The Search for Spock is greater than or tied with The Wrath of Khan. And then we have Star Trek movie 5, which is, I would put at the absolute bottom. The absolute bottom. So, let's review here. First place, second place, third place, fourth place, fifth place, sixth place. And I've already made its own separate video for the motion picture, and I've already made half of this video talking about the motion picture. This is such a great film. I could spend hours talking about this film. There's so much to discuss, but we're going to move on a little bit here. Now, Star Trek 2, the problem here is that Star Trek the motion picture works, especially if you are a Star Trek TOS fan. Obviously, Star Trek the Wrath of Khan also works, but it works because of an episode in the TOS. Khan is introduced in TOS Season 1, and Kirk and Spock's friendship that grows over time. You're probably going to at least want to watch the first season of TOS to get that understanding and that perspective, so that when Spock buys it at the end of the film, it impacts you. because just watching these two films and then when Spock buys it at the end, it doesn't really impact you. You don't really know him too much. But if you have watched the TOS, the entirety of TOS, and then you get to these movies, when he finally buys it, that's where it impacts you. It impacts a TOS fan. And it wouldn't really impact a moviegoer, so as to say. If you had watched The Wrath of Khan and you had never heard of Star Trek before, you hadn't even watched any Star Trek, you didn't even watch the first one, you're coming into The Wrath of Khan because your friend said, oh, this is a great movie, come on, watch it. You watch this movie, right? And you go, well, they don't really introduce Khan all that great. He just gives you exposition about what happened to him, but we don't really see what happened to him. And they go like, oh, because that happened in an episode in TOS. And you go, well, I didn't see that episode, so how are they gonna... and they don't really do it that well there. It really is harmed by how much it relies on the TV series. The motion picture doesn't really have that problem. The motion picture reintroduces the characters in a way that feels seamless. It's very well done. I could watch this movie without having seen a single episode of TOS, and I would not be lost. It's just reintroducing the crew, but if you hadn't been introduced to them, period, you're just introduced to the crew, you're put on the ship, and you get to see it done. You get to see the story unfold, and it feels like an expertly self-contained story. The Wrath of Khan has problems in this way. It doesn't satisfy as a movie itself. It needs the show to exist, if that makes sense. This doesn't really need the show to exist. If the TOS show hadn't existed, and they just released this movie, I still think it would have been a successful film on par with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This one, though, it needs TOS. It needs it. The episode with Khan is one of the better episodes of Season 1, absolutely. But you need that episode. In fact, I'm almost surprised that the copy here, there's bonus features on all these films. I'm surprised that Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, did not include the Khan episode as a bonus feature. I would almost expect the Khan episode of TOS to be included as bonus features for any copy of The Wrath of Khan to be released. And I would expect the Naked Time to be released as bonus feature for Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, because both of those episodes are very important to both of these films. The Naked Time is the episode where Spock figures out the formula for time travel, and Kirk just casually mentions, hey, Spock, figure out the formula for time travel, and Spock figures out the formula for time travel. Well, it's referencing The Naked Time, the episode where Spock figures it out, and they never really do it too much. They just casually do some time travel here and there, but it's calling back to The Naked Time where Spock figured out how to do it, and so he computates the formula into the computer. They do their little slingshot around the sun for the little time travel shtick, and it's fine. Even if you hadn't seen The Naked Time, it's not going to be that big of a problem, so much as it is a big problem in The Wrath of Khan. Khan did not really stand out to me as a character the first time I watched this movie. He really didn't. I like the actor, I like his portrayal, but his motivations are kind of put into question. He's a very intelligent person, and he should believe himself more intelligent than most other people, obviously, and so maybe he should have realized, hey, they marooned me on a planet that actually wasn't half bad. How could they have figured an asteroid would have struck the planet, and I can't expect them to come check on me every couple of years, so it's only natural that they don't realize what happened to us. His motivations are kind of put into question here. Now, if he wants to have a second shot at conquering Kirk, that's different. Khan is a conqueror. It's what he does. It's in his nature to conquer. So when he gets the second chance to conquer Kirk, that should be his entire motivation, not this grudge that he has against Kirk. That shouldn't be anything. In fact, he should respect Kirk for having gotten the best of him. He's not genetically enhanced like he is. He should respect Kirk as a valuable opponent. So going up against him again to conquer him, to defeat him, is the reward in and of itself. There's no malice here. Losing his wife and his crew is just a sad consequence of unforeseen things that these inferior humans could not have figured out. And then maybe he might be a little upset that an inferior person got the best of him, but that's just how much he would respect Kirk, you know? The episode of TOS really shows this with his character, and that's why I feel like a lot of that is lost in this movie, so that we can have a movie. When we get to the search for Spock, I kind of liked it. Whenever Nimoy tries to expand on Vulcan spiritualism, Vulcan culture, like, a lot of the ideas come from Leonard Nimoy. It comes from his ideas, and he directed this film. So obviously he came up with a lot of creative ideas for how to expand this, for how to bring Spock back. And there's one scene that he films at the end of The Wrath of Khan, where Spock puts his hand on McCoy's face and says, "Remember." Basically, he's world building here in this third movie by saying this is what a Vulcan does to transfer or make a copy of his consciousness and place it into the mind of another using the mind meld technique. He's basically copying his brain, making a copy of it because he's about to die. But since he made a copy of himself and placed it into McCoy, if his body were to survive, and I wholly have expected that Spock would have realized that they would place his coffin on the Genesis planet. You see, Spock is fiercely intelligent. Spock is fiercely, he's like 15 moves ahead of everybody. And I actually wholly expected this from his character when I watched this. After watching TOS, when I watched this movie, I realized that Spock had already put it together. Spock had already realized, according to human customs, they would put him into a coffin, and they would shoot him off into space, and they would probably just shoot him towards the planet of Genesis. He was making a gamble, but he was making a logical one. He was making a logical, predictive gamble where they would shoot his body that would die from the radiation from saving the ship. They would place his coffin onto the Genesis planet while it was while it was revitalizing itself, and his body would be regenerated, and then his copy of his mind that he placed in McCoy, he would get to be placed into his body again through a Vulcan spiritual technique taking place on the planet Vulcan. All of this stuff makes sense. I don't understand why people don't like this movie. It makes complete sense to me. It's all a bunch of world building, and yes, Vulcans are aliens. Their customs and ways are alien, so you probably wouldn't understand it from the Vulcan perspective, but I mean, I could. What does that say about me? I completely followed this. I could follow it completely. Their motivations and all of that stuff, it makes sense. And yes, even the illogical Klingon responses in this, just so we can have some Klingons to fight in the third movie, makes sense. The Klingons are responding to this in a way that Klingons have to respond to this. It's like when you're watching this and you keep seeing the Klingons say, "Oh, this Genesis device is a weapon. They're planning to use this against us, to throw it at our planets, to basically commit mass genocide against our people." And you're realizing that they're saying this because that's what they would do if they had it. That's why they're thinking like this, because this is exactly what they would do if they had the Genesis device. They would use the Genesis device on Federation planets to get rid of their enemy. It's practical, it's pragmatic, it's something that they would do, and it's something that they expect the Federation to do, because that's the only way that they know how to do things. And so from their limited perspective, they think the Genesis device is a weapon, even though it's a device for life. It would never be used as a weapon, though it could be used as one. And so that's how the Klingons are thinking about it. It's their culture, and I like that they're expanding upon that culture, even if it makes the Klingons sound like a bunch of belligerents. But they are belligerent. That's the whole point. The movie is fine. It really is. It has some problems, but I would say it doesn't have any more or less than The Wrath of Khan does, since it relies on The Wrath of Khan to exist. The problems that The Wrath of Khan has are the Search for Spock's problems, in my opinion. I really enjoyed The Search for Spock, and I think the Klingons are a far better antagonist for Kirk than Khan was. I honestly think that Khan and Kirk should have had a physical combat, hand-to-hand combat type of thing, like Kirk and the Klingon officer played by Doc Brown's actor. He did it. Christopher Plummer, I think that's his name. No, the Christopher Plummer's in this one, or is it? I keep getting everybody's names mixed up. Christopher Lloyd. That's it. Christopher Lloyd. You see, they're both named Christopher, but Plummer's in this one, Lloyd's in this one. Christopher Lloyd's character gets to have a fist of hand-to-hand combat. It's very good. It's very good. In The Search for Spock, as the planet's blowing up, they get to have this one big final fight. I honestly think you could have given that to Kirk and Khan, and given the big spaceship naval battle to the Klingon. But it is what it is. It's still, they're both fine. They're honestly both fine. I would put The Search for Spock on the same level as Wrath of Khan, but I just enjoyed Search for Spock more, if that makes sense. Obviously, Kirk's son and the Kirk's son's mother, those characters were far better written in this movie. And Sarek was far better written in this movie than she was in this movie. She was just kind of there in this movie, and she was far better utilized in this movie. So obviously, people would say, oh, it's just not as good, because they liked the performances of some of the characters. And yeah, you're right. I would just say they're both on the same level, but I personally enjoy Search for Spock more than The Wrath of Khan. When we move into The Voyage Home, it's a guilty pleasure. It's a fantastic movie. It's not Star Trekian enough for me to consider it cerebral storytelling, like on the vein of TOS, but it has that TOS elements. There's this giant probe that comes flying into Earth's solar system, and it's making these strange sounds, and nobody knows what these sounds are. Spock hears the sounds, and he puts it together. And he says these are whale noises, and they put it through the computer and simulate the sounds through underwater sounds, and it's the sound of a blue whale. It's a blue whale's song. It's a blue whale's cry. And Spock says, if this is what I think it is, we cannot respond to this message. This message will never be responded to. The blue whale is extinct. And it's a bit of environmentalism stuff going on. There's a lot of environmentalist things going on. Operation Greenpeace. Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner are part of this thing, Operation Greenpeace. You can look it up. William Shatner's still part of Greenpeace, even as of this current year, man. It's an effect going on for a lot longer. This movie probably had some help in preserving the blue whale's population today. It's coming back, the blue whale population. It's still endangered, but it's coming back. And I like that this movie is one of those types of movies that tries to inform people about the blue whale and all of that stuff. But how does it stand as a Star Trek movie? Well, I like the idea that they had to go back in time to collect blue whales. They didn't necessarily have to go back in time to the 80s to collect blue whales, but that's just the story element idea. They could have gone back to the 1600s when blue whales are very populous and just grabbed a pair of them from the ocean. And here's one of my problems with Star Trek 4 Come Into Play, and I have forgiven a lot of these problems just for how entertaining the movie is. It's a very campy movie, but it was an entertainingly campy movie, much like Spock's Brain is a very entertaining, campy episode of Season 3. The Voyage Home is a very campy but entertaining movie. The problems are numerous. For example, there's a couple ideas that they should have talked about regarding time travel, and one of those episodes is one of the best episodes of Star Trek, is where Kirk falls in love with a woman from the past. He falls madly in love with her, but Spock tells her that she has to die. If she does not die, something terrible, the chain of events, the butterfly effect for modern day, is going to be catastrophic. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be horrible. And so this woman that Kirk has fallen madly madly in love with has to die for time to go in the correct order, in the correct way it was supposed to go. And so Kirk has to be held back by Bones and Spock as he watches the woman that he fell in love with die. And the idea that I thought would have been a good idea here is Spock saying to Kirk and everybody else, we can't just go back to the 1600s and grab some whales and come back. We don't know if those whales would have had any, or their offspring would have had any impact on history. And so we have to pick a pair of whales who were already destined to die, so that their disappearance would not change anything. And so going to this very specific pair of whales in the 1980s, a pair of whales that were destined to be picked up, shipped off to the Alaskan waters, where they were immediately poached and killed by some whalers, would basically saying you're picking up whales that were doomed to disappear anyways, so you're not changing much. I like that, but they don't mention it. They don't mention it because timey-wimey and common casual audience, stuff like that. But this is the Star Trek audience. We like when you get scientific. We like it. It's why we go to you. What else? Another problem I have is the woman. The Kirk has a kind of maybe love interest with this woman from the 80s. And they commit the cardinal sin. It's like somebody watched that episode of TOS, and they saw the woman that Kirk fell in love with, and they said, let's give Kirk a happy ending. Let's give this woman back to the present with him. And nobody made any thoughts about the time changes, the butterfly effects this would do to the timeline. For example, this woman could have had a child who would be very important to science. And if you yoink her out of her place in time, that child is never born, and that event that this child conducted with this major impact to science would never have been conducted by him. It might have been conducted by somebody else, but time would be irrevocably changed and altered in such a way that maybe by the time they return to the present, it's the Klingons who have conquered the Federation. And it's like, I think about these things, and the movie did not think about that. So that's probably why it's ranked so low. It's a very enjoyable, campy movie, but it needs that extra oomph. It needs that extra thought scientifically put into it. When we get to Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, though, it's easily the worst one of all 6 of them. But it's not because it's a bad movie, it's because it had the potential to be a great movie. The film as it is would be passable for a made-for-TV movie, or a double-length episode of a TV series. And here's my rant for this whole thing. Star Trek 2 through 4 was made as a trilogy. Star Trek 5 and 6 are not made as a duology. There's no real connection between them at all. But Star Trek 2 through 4 is a trilogy. The story leads into each one. This one goes into this one, goes into this one. And at the end of Star Trek 4, Kirk, who had been promoted to Admiral during the time skip, 10 to 15 year time skip, when he's introduced in the motion picture, is demoted back to captain for defying orders, but he eventually ended up saving the world, so they dropped almost all the charges except for defying orders, and so they demoted him from Admiral and back to captain, and said that they're going to effectively immediately make him command of a starship again. And they had already rebuilt the Enterprise. They rebuilt an Enterprise, and they put Kirk in charge of the Enterprise. And then the film just ends with Kirk and the original TOS bridge crew on the new Enterprise, and they're going out into space, and it's like setting up a new series. It's like it's like the story itself is setting itself up to say, hey, if you want to bring back the TV show, here it is. Here we are. We're ready to go. And obviously they're a bit older. Almost everybody here is in their 50s or 60s by now. except for I think George Takei might be in his late 40s or something, and Chekhov might be in his 40s. But Kirk, he's in his 50s. Leonard Nimoy's in his 50s. DeForest Kelley's in his 60s or something. But everybody's getting up there in the age, right? But this would be like prime time. If you were going to make a TV series with the TOS crew, now would have been your time to do it. You could have made a 1 to 3 season, 3 years basically, 1 to 3 years, 3 seasons, 1 to 3 seasons of the TOS crew set after the voyage home. And it would have worked. I honestly think it would have worked. You see, I did some research. TNG came out the year following the voyage home, which made me think that Paramount was actually contemplating making a TV series, bringing the TOS crew back. But then they realized, oh, maybe Kirk and Spock are their actors. They're pretty big names now. Like, they both already have stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, even by this point. And they were thinking, oh, their budgets. We don't want to have the budget to make a TV series like this. We need new characters to bring in a new generation. So they come up with the idea of Star Trek: The Next Generation for 1987. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, around this time, Viacom, who owned Paramount at the time, if I remember my research here correctly, had already purchased majority control over Showtime at this time. And I'm thinking, you could have had TNG for cable syndication, for cable television, regular cable. And you could have made a special season, maybe one season, even if it's just one season, one 16 to 20 episode season of high quality, high budget TOS crew episodes set onto Showtime to launch Paramount's owned Showtime's new programming lineup for 1987. It would have been a genius no-brainer move, honestly. It's a Paramount hindsight here, 87. A TOS crew, you could have got them all back in. You had to just get the extra budget for a Showtime series budget to pay for Shatner and Nimoy to come back. And you could have made a 16 to 20 episode length season where Kirk on the new Enterprise set after the voyage home goes on a new series of adventures. And maybe the Final Frontier could have been a made-for-TV movie, or double-length episode. Just ignore the Final Frontier entirely. Because when we talk about the Final Frontier, you're going to realize why this movie kind of should have just been a part of a TV series and not necessarily its own movie. But then again, its original format could have worked as its own movie as well. But there are a lot of problems with this movie, both creatively and especially final portrayally. It was an editing nightmare. It was the special effects company Industrial Light and Illusion that worked on the previous movies was busy with other projects at the time, so they couldn't get them to make the special effects for the Final Frontier, so they had to use a cheaper company, and this company's cheapness shows. The special effects of the Final Frontier feel on par with special effects from the TOS TV series. And I'm talking about the remastered TV series, not the TV series as it originally aired in the 60s. When you watch the TOS TV series, if you purchase the DVD collection or you watch it on Paramount, you're probably watching the version that was edited roughly, I want to say, in the early 2000s to have slightly better graphics. When you get to see the Enterprise, they had re-edited the Enterprise a little bit, added some CG touch-up here and there. When you get to see the phasers, they added some more CG touch-up to the phasers, and they just added a little bit of touch-up to all the special effects in the films, in the episodes. Not super in-your-face, modern-day special effects, but they're cheaper effects that look like they would be decent quality for that time period. And the special effects for the Final Frontier feel on par with the effects of the remastered TOS episodes. And on that level, it feels nostalgic to me. It does. The special effects are cheap. It feels like an episode of the TOS series. But it does not work as a film why is it set after these 3 movies? It just not work. There's this. So we have this character called Sybok, and he's Spock's half brother, Sarek's other son, made from a Vulcan wife. And right away, I don't understand why that happened, unless you'd say Sarek is already an older man. And but then you say, oh no, they were raised together. It's just a lot of problems. A lot of problems with this expanding world building problem here. And the timeline doesn't really fit here for Sarek to have yet another son here with another woman, and then they're raised together, even though Spock's mother was there with Spock during all. It's just he should have just been a different character. He should have just been a completely different character. Let me be like Romulan. You could have made Sybok a Romulan, not a Vulcan, not Spock's brother. Maybe just another Vulcan entirely. That could have worked too. It could have been Spock's friend. But so we got Sybok, who is basically acting like this evangelist who has had visions that at the center of the galaxy there is the creator of the galaxy. The originator of all life in the galaxy is at this center planet, and he wants to take a crew there. He just happens to take Kirk's ship there, and he just happens to convince everybody to mutiny against Kirk to go to this planet for no reason at all. And once Kirk regains control of the ship and control of the crew, everybody just acts like they were never brainwashed. It's just the plot. I understand why this movie is poo-pooed on. It is easily the worst one. As a film, as a theatrical film, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Now, as a simple episode in TOS, maybe Season 2, maybe Season 3. If this was a TOS episode in Season 3, I don't think people would have poo-pooed it as much. If this was just a 40-minute episode, where the plot of this was just condensed into a 40-minute episode for a 1969 Season 3 episode of TOS, it would have been fine. It really would have been. It feels like a Season 3 episode rather than a movie. It doesn't have too much movie energy about it. I kind of like a lot of the effects being cheap. It just feels like TOS. It feels like an episode of TOS, the cheap look about it. It doesn't work as a movie, though. It just really does not work as a movie. It's one of the worst. It is the worst of the movies. Of the 6 here. I don't know if it's worse than Nemesis or not. Maybe. But yeah, I would probably put it below Nemesis. It's incredibly forgivable. I didn't remember a single thing about this movie by the time I got into it. And let's talk about the finale. Like, when they finally get to the planet, it doesn't feel like Star Trek. Spock doesn't pull out tricorders, giving out tricorder readings of who this thing is and what this entity is. We're just made to accept he is who he says he is. It kind of gives off the energy of the Apollo episode of Season 2, but the Apollo episode was done better than this. We just needed more time to explain the planet, to explain the entity, to spend time with the entity. Like, this would have worked as a 2-part episode. It really would have been. Part 1, Sybok takes over the ship, and the ship is set course for the planet. Episode 2, the ship makes it to the planet. They encounter the entity, and they banter with the entity, and they spend time with the entity, and we learn about the entity, and then they turn against the entity, and they escape. It would have been a 2-part episode in Season 3, if they made it to, if they were going to put this in the series and make it work, I would have put it into Season 3 as a 2-part episode. That's just how it feels to me, okay? It's just how it feels. Then we get to the Undiscovered Country, which is much better than the Final Frontier. Much better. In fact, I would actually say it's better than the Voyage Home and the Wrath of Khan, but I have to put these two together, so I often put this in second place behind the motion picture. It feels better than this one. This one's more entertaining. The Voyage Home is more entertaining, but I would say this one is a better story than the Voyage Home, so it's better than that. It's better than these two. It's not better than the motion picture. The Undiscovered Country feels very Star Trek, TOS-y, with some politics. There's a lot of great politics episodes in the TOS series, where there's like this one episode where Kirk encounters these two planets in this system that have been warring with each other for centuries. And they have come up with a very peaceful way of initiating war, where they're basically pulling up digital simulations of cities, and they're doing digital attacks on digital cities. And they say, oh, we have just killed 10,000 people here. All of these people are dead. But there's no actual explosion. There's no like earthquakes, no weapons have actually been fired. But these 10,000 people have been registered as dead, so that these 10,000 people have to go to an incineration chamber and die, essentially. They have to just be killed. And that's how they have conducted this peaceful war that will be ongoing forever. And Kirk goes like, you guys are mad! And he tries to fix it. And he fixes it through Kirk diplomacy. It's a great episode. It really is. I loved it. But there are a lot of politics episodes like that, and this has that type of politics energy. There's an explosion on a Klingon moon, which harms the Klingon homeworld. And the Klingon homeworld has only 50 years left of existence before the Klingon homeworld is left unlivable, and everybody on it either has to die or be relocated. And so the Klingons are now in peace talks with the Federation so that they can get rid of all of this war stuff, because they can't sustain it. And there are some old dogs on both sides that want the hostilities to continue, because the hostilities of war are all they know. Which is kind of strange for a Federation thing, because even Kirk, as a soldier of his own thing, he would actually support peace talks himself, even against Klingons. But maybe because of what happened to his son in the search for Spock, he's a little bit prejudiced against Klingons. Maybe not against Romulans, but against Klingons, he might be just a little bit angry. But he can go beyond his anger for peace in this case, and he does. He goes beyond his anger in the hopes of peace, and he highlights the best of humanity and what the Federation is trying to believe in and be. It's kind of questionable for some of the other members of the Federation to be more warmongering. It never was meant to be warmongering and all that stuff. It was all Starfleet. It was all about exploring, discovery, and defense. Admittedly, defense, not offense, but defense. Which means even if you make peace with the Klingons, you're still going to need defense. You see, let me explain this to you in a way that they did not explain in the movie, okay? Now bring on our little pad and paper here. You see, let's say this is the known universe, right? Let's say the Federation is all over here. We're going to put F for Federation. Let's say the Klingons are over here. Let's put a K for Klingons. Let's say the Romulans are over here. So we have the Federation, we have the Klingons, and the Romulans, right? And if the Federation and the Romulans have already made peace talks, and then the Federation and the Klingons are going to make peace talks, then this whole circle is going to be one united, peaceful area. And the Federation are talking about just saying, hey, we're no longer going to need a military. Well, no, actually, you're probably still going to need a military, because you see, this is just one small bubble. Let's say the universe is, let's say just the outer-lying neighboring galaxies are right here. And let's say there's a hostile force right here. We're just going to say HF. Right there. There's a hostile force up here that you have not encountered yet. And let's say, as you're exploring and this circle gets bigger, and you're learning about more uncharted and peaceful areas you're making, let's say, as the Enterprise and other ships go out to explore and discover, you eventually encounter this hostile force, which attacks and destroys some of your Enterprise ships, Enterprise-class ships. Well, you're gonna need a military force to defend yourself now, aren't you? It's very simple. It's a very simple concept. The universe is big. Your galaxy is a little itty bitty blip. Okay? Let's say let's say this little dot is the galaxy, the entire galaxy of Star Trek. Everything that has ever happened so far is in this tiny little blip. And let's say there's all these other galaxies. There's all these other galaxies out there. So many of these galaxies, so many of these systems. And we have not even gone outside of that circle. We haven't even gone outside of that. So there's all this, with all these unknown cultures and species and alien militaries just waiting for first contact. So there's a couple problems I did have with the Undiscovered Country, where they said, oh, let's hang up the military, we're making peace with the Klingon. No, you're just making peace with the latest hostile force you found. You're going to find plenty more to need to defend yourself against. This universe is huge. But I guess people just did. They just didn't think about that. They didn't think about that. So I can forgive them for not thinking about that, even though I did. Even though I thought about it immediately. I immediately thought about it. But I can forgive them for not thinking about that. The Undiscovered Country is a fun movie. It's a very fun movie. It's fun on the level of The Voyage Home, but it's a little bit more believable than The Voyage Home, which is why it's in second place for me. So let's do our final counting tally here. The Motion Picture is my favorite movie of all 6 of these. It's very good. I could talk about it for hours. The Undiscovered Country is in second place. It's a very movie Star Trek feel. The Voyage Home is the most pulpy family movie of them all. It's the most accessible one, of course, but I would say it's probably not as accessible as the Undiscovered Country, simply because you need to watch these 2 movies to get to this one. It's trilogies. It's a story trilogy. Then after that, I would put The Search for Spock in 4th place, The Wrath of Khan in 5th place, and then the final place would be The Final Frontier. These are very fun movies, but maybe two, maybe 3 of them are high quality. I wouldn't call The Voyage Home high quality, I would call it high entertainment. The Search for Spock and Wrath of Khan are 2 parts of a big story. It's high quality, big story, but it's not as enjoyable as The Voyage Home. It's not as enjoyable to me, but I like it. It's not the TOS series, especially Season 1 quality. The only one that I would say even comes close to Season 1 quality would be The Motion Picture. Season 2, these 2 are Season 2 quality. This is Season 2 quality. And I would say this is Season 3 quality. This would probably be Season 3 quality, but it could also work as a Season 2 quality episode as well. There's a lot of pulpy, cheesy stuff happening in Season 2 as well. And you meet Apollo in Season 2, but I would say this works as a Season 3 episode since it's just more campy. It's just not as good as the Apollo episode, in my opinion. But yeah, that's it. That's my final discussion on Star Trek, the TOS crew. We are finished with the TOS crew until we get the animated series, and we'll talk about that whenever we get around to that. Who knows when? This year, next year, 2 years from now? I don't know. I do these things when I feel like it, do these things when I get around to it. So yeah, that's it. That's Star Trek. We'll see what we do next time.